All right, so on our Q&A submissions, like I said last week, we are going to a video format. We've got a couple submissions so far, so we're going to kind of slow roll them out over the next couple weeks, but we need more of them. So y'all go right in your video questions. Like I said, there's not a ton of them right now, so we're going to get to them pretty quickly.
They're in the links down the show notes below.
Yep, in the link. Contact form on the website, or not contact form, there's a Q&A submission on the website where you can go drop your video. And today you'll get to see what that actually looks like because our buddy Zach White got the first one.
Yep.
He got spot numero uno.
And by the way, website is thesouthernOutdoorsmen.com.
MEN.
Even if you do man, it's still going to pop up.
Yeah, it does pop up. Actually, so that AI stuff I just started using to look at our analytics, our number one search term across all platforms is Southern Outdoors Man, MAN. Dude, maybe we should have just named it the Southern Outdoors Man.
No.
I mean, it is what it is. Anyways,
unless your pronoun's a little bit different.
The Southern Outdoors, they, them. Anyways. All right. We'll kick it off with the video question, which I'll play, and then we'll do a regular question after that.
Yep. Does Jacob Myers have buck fever? I want to know. I want to know, Jacob. You like to talk about killing big deer, seeing big deer. But do you have buck fever? And what are you going to do to fix that?
Ooh. Coming out of the gate hot at poor Jacob over here. Do you have buck fever? I don't feel like you do, actually.
Not to like
I think
Luke Bryan. Is he dead?
Is he down?
No. Yeah, is he down? Not is he dead? Not to that extreme, but
I feel like you have a different kind of buck fever.
I mean, it's more like if you were on the outside, it's like watching me. It's like, yeah, heart rate's going up, but it's not like trembling, shaking. It's like, okay, I have to kill this thing now. And like the now part is probably what kind of bites me in the butt a little bit, especially like in Kansas, which is what I think Zach's talking about, where it's like you're quickly trying to get a shot instead of like slowing down and letting it kind of play out and get in position instead of trying to rush it. So like my part, probably like, yeah, when it comes to like buck fever for me, it's more like rushing the opportunity.
So not so much the shot.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not necessarily. I wouldn't say
Interesting.
necessarily the shot. It's like rushing the opportunity, and then when the opportunity presents itself, because you're like, it kind of goes back to like what Michael Parrish talked about on the podcast in the past. Is like, he may get 2, maybe 3 opportunities a year at a mature buck, and like when it happens, you've got to execute on that opportunity. And I think that kind of, I have that same mindset. So it's like when that buck does come out and it's like, 100% shooter, it's like make him dead, like kill him now.
Make him dead.
Get them flat, get them horizontal on the ground. So that's probably the biggest thing. And that's, again, kind of going back to probably what Zach's alluded to, like with Kansas, is like just that buck coming on the weak side in too fast, trying to spin around the saddle, try to get a shot at him, was what caused it. It was like, it happened so fast. It's like there was no nerves as in like convulsing shaking or anything like that. It was just like, there's a big buck, I got to shoot him, and then just rush the shot.
Okay,
Or not even rush, I didn't even get a shoot, but like rushed getting in position in order to take a shot.
Okay. That makes sense. I thought about it. I thought when someone mentions that, I immediately go to the shot, and yeah, you're really good with the shot. I mean, especially with a rifle. Jacob is definitely a better rifle shot than me. But anytime you actually get to shoot one, you almost never miss. You had the one like last year.
Why'd you say that?
I mean, you had the one last year, but that was a case of mistaken yardage.
Well, yes, that, and then also not understanding what the rules were, as in on the SOA 18-inch main beam or 16-inch inside spread.
Not
and I thought it was and for some stupid reason, and he was way outside.
Which doesn't make any sense because you've already shot a buck on an SOA before.
I know. I didn't think about it. I just like it's whatever. So, anyways, but yeah, that's more so the situation. But I'll be honest, like when it comes with like bow hunting, I haven't had enough opportunities where I've had just truly big deer right in bow range to like get opportunities to shoot at them. Just being 100% honest. Like I know one that happened in Tennessee, but it happened so fast that he was in and out of that shooting lane before I could even like have my bow fully drawn back, and there was like no times for nerves. It was just like, I've got to get an opportunity. I got to get the bow, got to get drawn back real quick, and he was gone because I was playing on my stupid phone at the time.
Well, what do you think's the cure to that then? If you have an issue, which I'm sure a lot of listeners probably have it too, with, you get busted in that instance. Like you kind of rush the opportunity, you don't take your time, and you end up getting busted. What's the solution to that?
It's way easier with a rifle than with a bow. I'll tell you that. He can bust me. We'll figure out a way to get that bullet through there. I mean, I was telling myself on these later hunts after the Kansas trip that, like, okay, if one does come in, it's like, and I told Caden this in Kansas, and he said he never heard it, but I heard this a bunch. It's like slow is smooth, smooth is fast.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And I think that's a big aspect, like just being smooth in your transition, like getting your weapon, get situated, like get ready to shoot instead of just trying to rush into it. I think that's a huge aspect. And I kept just telling myself on some of these other hunts, like buck comes out, especially in like a tight little like logging road, which we're going to talk about later about this trip. Buck steps out. It's like, if you think he's good, like if you think he's like a quality buck, either stop him or you got to make a quick judgment call on whether or not you're going to shoot that deer. Because if you need to get a second look, you need to do something to get his attention in order to stop and look at you. You're talking to rifle hunting here, not bow hunting. In order to like confirm exactly what you think he is. Because of course, buck from a side profile looks quite a bit different from looking right at you. If you have certain, specifics on what you're looking for quality of deer, especially on one of these places that, you get in a lot of trouble if you don't kill one of a certain size.
Yeah.
So I think that's a big part. But like the biggest thing is just like slowing down. And like, to be honest, there's no way to really train for it except for having opportunities and screwing up on opportunities. So like, the more opportunities you have.
I'll slightly disagree because I think small game is a great way to train for it.
Small game. A squirrel does not have 135 inches.
Well, yeah, but learning how to stalk and move on an animal is a transferable skill, is what I'm saying.
If I'm in a tree, where's the stalking come into a factor then?
I mean, just knowing how to move on an animal. Same thing with a turkey. Like, when the animal's not paying attention to you, when its head goes behind a tree, what you can and can't get away with. I mean, I'm not saying that a squirrel's a 160-inch deer, but I am saying that is the first time you've ever tried to move on an animal, like, or one of the, I'll put it this way, is one of the first 15 times you've ever tried to move on an animal a 160-inch deer, or have you done it hundreds of times with small game, turkeys, does, stuff like that, and you've just got reps? I'm saying because I don't feel like I've personally ever really had that problem. Like you call it shark eyes when I go into the mode.
I know. You say you don't have that. You might not experience it. Our SOA hunt that's on YouTube, I witnessed it. Like, not rushing, but like trying to get on the gun and like get situated and everything. The biggest thing I feel like is like, you either have to have the opportunities or you have to have the mental focus when that happens to tell yourself, slow down, pay attention to the body language. And also, because this bit me in the butt as a kid, where I was too patient and did not kill deer because I was trying to wait for like, oh, he's going to hit a bigger shooting hole, and the hole doesn't look like what it should have looked like, or what I thought it was going to look like when the buck walked through. And then like the buck just walks off, and I never get a shot at him. Like, I specifically remember a big deer down the farm that I let just walk because I was like, oh, he's going to get to another lane. Oh, he's going to get to another lane. And every time we get there, it was like you could see less and less of the deer as he was working this tree line.
That happened to me on that muzzleloader hunt a couple years ago.
Yeah, so there's a fine line of like, hey, I need to execute on the shot, but also paying attention as that buck's moving, or as that deer's moving, it doesn't matter. Looking at the deer and then looking what's ahead and figuring out where that potential hole in the cover is that you can get a shot opportunity. Because if you're so dead focused on the deer, you might take a less desirable shot because, maybe 5 yards in front of the deer that you weren't paying attention to, there's a really big opening that it's about to like come up to the edge of, or maybe go through.
Yeah.
And that's probably a better opportunity in order to shoot that deer and get a clean shot versus trying to shoot through some grass or whatever. So anyway, it's like a fine line of like, slow is smooth, smooth is fast, and then also like execute when you can. But like, that's my biggest issue is like, again, trying to like rush an opportunity instead of, kind of letting it play out and trying to give you a better opportunity without letting that deer walk away. And I think it's easier with a rifle, much easier with a rifle than it is with a bow. Because especially like when it comes to like deflections, when it comes to, is the deer slightly walking out of your bow range? Is he kind of like around the edge of it? Like all that kind of stuff all plays a factor too. And then also just the movement of getting your bow drawn back. If he's kind of fixated in your general area, maybe you called to him or whatever. All that plays a big factor. And I think that's like focus on just being smooth helps. But kind of going back to it, yeah, I mean, I think everybody kind of gets buck fever unless you're just like don't get any excitement at all shooting a deer. But it's not like buck's coming in, and it's like this right here. Now listen, if I have my bow in my hand, it's broad daylight, and a 170, 180 come out, that's a different story. I'm talking like the normal Alabama deer and like stuff I've experienced pretty much up to this point. It's not necessarily like that. It's more so like focus, and then afterwards just completely losing it. Like I go back to a deer, which I've talked about on the podcast. Probably the biggest buck I've ever seen in the Southeast. That was in Tennessee. When he came up and he freaking busted me, I had a rifle in my hand. At 45 yards, I was 9 foot up this little tiny cedar tree because it was the only tree to climb, and he was walking right to me right at daylight, and he stopped and froze. And I had the gun up on him, and it was a single shot rifle. Which I will never shoot a single shot rifle again with a hammer on it because I freaking cocked that sucker back, and I was cool, calm in that moment. Second I cocked the hammer back, he jumps like back in some privet and was like just gone. That's why I'm sitting in the tree. That tree's vibrating like this, but it wasn't like that before the shot. It was after the shot. Oh, my mic fell down. It was like that after the shot. After
that's
the deer.
how I always usually fall apart after the shot.
Yeah.
Like, man, wait till I'll see this Kansas. I freaked out a little bit.
Yeah.
In Kansas.
Tree's doing this.
Pretty much. It was bad. Yeah, you heard me on the phone. All right, well, let's move on. This one is from Garrett Herring. We're going to go to a regular Q&A submission here. Again, submit those video Q&As. These are fun. I like doing them. So make sure you go and submit those. He said, if I'm getting a mature buck on camera at 5 a.m. working a scrape in late season, which this is in coastal South Carolina, early December, how do I know whether he is coming from feeding or going to bed? The scrape is on a pine hill going toward a food plot at the edge of a river bottom. So, all right, got a buck on camera, 5 a.m., just before daylight, working a scrape. How does he know whether or not he's going to feeding or going to bedding?
First off, is there good bedding close by? That would tell me kind of a factor. And then also, he might not even be going to that food plot. He might just be checking that scrape and kind of keep on working. Again, some of the GPS data that we've looked at, and specifically the one that we discussed with Dr. Michael Chamberlain, which was like 2 years ago, maybe 3 years ago now. He was talking about examples in Louisiana of where that happened, where like these big bucks or these older bucks they had collared weren't going to bait piles, they weren't going to food plots, they were just kind of swinging down of them, and it seemed like they never even went to those areas. Like they were feeding more on browse and acorns and everything else in the woods. So, I mean, I would personally, if it was me, I would assume that he's probably on his loop going back to bedding, especially if it's not the rut.
Yeah.
But, you know, he's coastal South Carolina. I'm pretty certain they rut kind of like late October, early November. So if this is still happening, he's probably working his way kind of back to bedding in that general area. But again, it's like I know guys who've killed big deer coming out and feeding on food plots at 7 o'clock in the morning. Yep. And it's like, you know, that's also a possibility as well. But that kind of goes back to trying to backtrack him with like his sign and not necessarily even using trail cameras, but kind of working towards the direction he's going or also coming from and kind of figuring out, is there any other kind of potential, first off, area that it seems like he's working into? Like if there's like a small pine thicket or thick creek bottom real close by that he could potentially be working back to, well, you can assume he's probably bedding in and then around that general location and kind of set up accordingly. But yeah, I mean, I think that's what majority of our guests would probably say as well.
Yeah.
It also comes down to like what's in your food plot too. And also you got corn piles. Does the food plot get really hunted and tons of hunting pressure? Because if it does, he's probably definitely not going to walk out into it unless, you know, it's during the rut and the doe brings him out there. So, you know, all those to me are kind of factors that would, you know, kind of point towards him probably working back to some kind of bedding site.
Yeah, I agree with all that. Yeah, I'd be curious if there's bedding nearby. But also, like if it's late season, I don't know what the pressure looks like on your area that you're hunting. But he could be bedding like in that river bottom or something. I mean, he could be bedding in more open woods if it's pretty low pressure. That's something that we saw in the GPS data, but also in the MSU extension paper that we did on the podcast last year. That's another thing they found was when the hunting pressure dropped, they were more likely to use those open hardwoods. And the hunting pressure rose. And that's something you see in early season a lot. Like in early season, you'll talk about, we'll hear a lot of guys talk about how they're finding deer bedding like right under the oak trees that they're feeding under, or they're bedding just out in the hardwoods kind of randomly. And I think part of that is because there's a little bit more cover being it's early season and the leaves are still up. But I think also part of it is there just hadn't been anybody in the woods in so long that the deer are so comfortable that they'll kind of bed wherever. And then throughout the season, especially in the deep south, they kind of get driven into the pine thickets.
That, but also the cover changes too. Early season,
yeah.
this hardwood drainage or this hardwood bottoms and everything, you're going to have some kind of mid-story. It might not be a ton of cover, but they add some shade for them. Slight visual obstruction as well. It kind of plays a factor. And then, kind of later season, it's like that's all gone. So, I mean, you could probably have one bed down there. You had a brush top or something that the deer want to get into. I always go back to look at some of these state parks. Like one that's super notable, at least on social media, is Guntersville State Park. And there'd be big deer walking around because you can't hunt that place. It's a lot of hardwoods. There's some pines on it, but it's mostly all hardwoods. And those deer will be in the wide open feeding on whatever. But again, they're so accustomed to, first off, no hunting pressure. They just kind of do what they want to do versus probably what's on your hunt club, your lease, piece of public land, private land that you have access to. It's not going to be necessarily like that if they're getting pretty well pressured.
Yeah, I agree. All right. I think we'll move on to Jacob's hunt here.
Sweet.
All right. So, Jacob, you had a SOA hunt that you were able to go on. Pretty coveted little hunt. First gun hunt of the year. And how'd it go? I mean, it's early rut. Or early, not early rut. It's like, I kind of hate to say early season. Would you call it pre-rut when you were there?
Yeah.
Definitely pre-rut.
Yeah, I mean, early pre-rut. Like, they're laying down scrapes. Bunch of rubs, bucks responding to calling. I called in, which we'll talk about. I called in a mature deer. It was an awesome 8-point and did not shoot the thing, which we'll talk about.
The way that you said that, you're like, didn't shoot the thing.
Yeah, our buddy Marky Golbetti, who's been on the podcast before with him and his brothers, he actually drew one of those pieces down there.
Yeah,
and he actually had a similar experience to me. He rattled in, I think if I remember correctly, it was either just a huge 6-point or the biggest 6-point he's ever seen, and ended up not shooting the deer. Because, again, same thing that happened to me the previous year.
Marky!
Well, same thing that happened to me the previous year, and I told him this, and he's like, oh, appreciate the clarification. He was thinking it's 18-inch main beams and 16-inch inside spread. And he's like, deer was way outside the ears, but it was so early. It was right at daylight when he called the deer into 10 yards. He said the main beams looked kind of short, but it's real tall, G2s and brow tines and just big body. And ended up not shooting the thing. But yeah, so like they were responding to calling. It seemed pretty well.
Yeah.
And actually I talked to like one of the area, not biologists, I guess technically he's a biologist, but also he kind of takes care of some of those properties. He said based off the data that they're seeing and how bucks are responding right now and also the doe tarsal glands, he said it looked like the rut was actually moved up almost a month. Like the activity they're seeing now, the first week of December, second week of December, was typically what they'd find the same time frame in January in the past. And I'm like, that's super interesting because everywhere else that is not what I've heard. So,
what's your read on that? What's your take?
I mean, so I went down there with one of our one of the listeners and buddies of the show, Tyler, and Tyler, he shot a doe, huge dude, big doe. I say big doe. It looked big. It was like 101 pounds, which for down there is pretty big. Okay.
Yep.
And dude, her tarsal glands pretty dark, had some color to them, had a little smell to them, a little sweetness to them, and
sweetness.
Yeah, like not like stank, not like buck tarsal, but like I was like, I need to cut these tarsals off. And he's going with me in the woods next time.
Yeah.
But anyways, he killed that deer, and he ended up seeing like four. He ended up that evening when he shot that deer, he shot another doe as well. He killed 2 does, second last evening, and he saw I think it was like 4 more does and 4 bucks come out. One of them looking at him, he was one of these borderline shooters, like a nice deer, real nice 8-point, had come out, and they were just kind of easing through, browsing, feeding, but not any kind of signs of them kind of breaking up. They were still kind of bachelor up, and the biologist said, he's like, we've had reports of people saying they've still seen bachelor groups, and other people saying they're kind of seeing them broke up, and actually some evidence of them fighting. So it's kind of like hit or miss on different parts, but the big thing about this hunt, so Tyler asked me when he drew the place, he's like, hey, would you want to go? I'm like, Absolutely. Are you kidding me? Yeah, dude.
It's cool, Tyler, that you invited Jacob and not me.
Yeah. Hey, listen.
It's fun.
Ginger brother from another mother. We had multiple people ask, "Are y'all brothers?" He's got the red beard, dude, the red hair, and everything, dude. I was like, "Yeah, he's my older brother." But anyway, it was just interesting, kind of seeing, like, we were going into the hunt on the unit that we had, very flat. Had for sure, I knew there was one big food plot in the place, big turkey food plot. And there was some fields around there. And I told him on his first gun hunt, nobody's hunting these food plots, and it's going to be really cold. Like, it's going to be in the 20s while we're there. Like, it was everything you wanted it to be.
And the stars aligned.
Yeah, and I'm like, I think one of us can kill one on one of those food plots. Like, if the food plots looks good and everything, like, nobody's hunting it. And I'm like, the thing about some of these SOA hunts, because they get such little pressure, the deer act like deer, okay? They're not, like, way, way back in the thicket. They're not waiting until dark to come out into some of these areas to go feed. It's very different from our normal public land hunting. And when we got out there after we had our little the powwow meeting with that area biologist and everything, kind of going over regulations, what to expect, all this kind of stuff, we went out there and started scouting. And dude, we were finding tracks everywhere. Found a couple bigger buck tracks again down there. It's like, at least in our past experience, like, the hooves of those deer aren't, like, huge. So it's not like you're not looking for a track as wide as your hand. I mean, if you found one and could 100% confirm it wasn't a pig, then you're like, oh.
Okay, that's interesting.
Yeah. Because I found a pig track. That sucker looked like a horse. Like, and I was finding mud lines, like, where they're rubbing on, the pigs were rubbing on trees that were, like, above my waist. And I'm like, I don't want to run into that
That's
thing.
a giant pig.
I'm like, I don't want to see what that looks like. So, but anyways, we started covering ground because me and him weren't able to make the scout day, and ended up finding, again, they were using the food plot real heavy, tracks all over the place, some big buck tracks, some rubs on the backside of the food plot, and started covering some other road beds. And the cover on these places is fantastic. Some of the best habitat you're going to find in the state of Alabama because of how they manage it. And they run fires through it every couple of years. So, like, you have big select cut pines that have, like, that perfect understory. It's like there's some briars under it. There's some saplings, but there's a lot of different browse species in these pines, and you can kind of slip your way through, and a lot of it's not completely, like, all chest thick, but it's roughly chest to almost head high in parts of it.
Yeah.
So there's, like, good cover, there's good browse, and it just made it fantastic. And we kind of came up with a game plan and started kind of hunting it. And what I told him, I was like, dude, and also we were staying with Tommy, our buddy Tommy, and he's like, dude, y'all just need to sit when you're interior road beds, which he's told us that for 3 years.
Yeah, oh yeah, Tommy knows.
And I'm like, that was kind of my plan. And Tyler's never done that, and so I was like, let's try to do that the first day. So that afternoon was the first time we hunted. I found one logging road on the property that had 3 scrapes going down it. 2 of them had been freshly hit. Coming out some thick pines, going in some really thick, like, younger pines.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I can sit on the ground and literally shoot 200 yards down this fire break, this old logging road. And I ended up doing that. And then Tyler set the food plot. And I'm like, dude, I'm going to call. Like, this cool weather. We're seeing buck sign. Like, I'm going to do some grunts and to see what happens. And
They're feeling a little frisky.
Yeah, I'm thinking they're going to feel a little frisky. Ended up doing a couple grunt sequences. And I put the call down. It's like probably 4 o'clock. It gets sunset. Was like 4:40, 4:45. And 3 minutes later, I hear this, like, not crashing sound, but like something's coming through those thick pines, like off my left. And I'm like looking down this road bed. And I'm like, oh, this is something. And all of a sudden I see antlers coming through.
No, I didn't know this part of the story.
Oh, yeah. I see.
What?
He, like, gets up to the edge. I just see tines. And I'm like, safety's off, dude. Like, I was sitting there I was sitting there in my chair, and I had my my tripod I mount my gun to, and I throw the safety off. I'm like, he's got big tines. I'm like, this deer's dead. Like, let's double check and make sure he's got to have 18-inch beams, or he's got to be 16-inch inside spread. I take the safety off, and he stops right on the edge of it. And this is something that Tommy talked a lot about. He's like, those big bucks, they come up to like one of these road beds or logging roads. He's like, if he's a mature deer, he'll come up right to the edge of it, stop. And it's kind of like, he'll actually like look a little bit left and right and just kind of see what's out there. And then he'll kind of ease out into it.
Yeah.
And that's what that deer did. And he eases out into it. And I'm looking, I got the safety off. I'm like, dude, he's got great time length, really good mass. I'm like, this deer, and I saw his body. I'm like, this deer's 100% 5+ years old. Like mature, like bigger body than the one.
So he came like crashing in there.
Yeah, he like came running in there, and he stopped. And he eased out into it and kind of looked around, and I'm like, looking from the side profile, I'm like, his beams look short. His beams, his rack went really good mass, went up and then kind of curled around, and the front side of his beams looked like it was right around the eye. And they're one of 18-inch main beams. They're talking about like it needs to be out close to the nose or at the nose. But they said if you get one of these tall rack bucks where the beams kind of go up a little bit and they curl in, it's hard to judge them. And I'm like looking at them, and I'm trying to count 3 ear lengths. Ear length roughly on a lot of these deer about 6 inches. So I'm like looking for 3 ear lengths of
main beam.
Of beam. And I can't see the front of his beams because his beams swoop in. They like curl around and they swoop back. But I'm like, this deer is mature. This deer's freaking big body. Awesome rack, big rack. And he finally stops in the middle of the roadbed, and he like looks back at me. He like looks in my direction, looks to the right, and I see him, and he's only like, he might be 14 inches wide. I mean, he's like right there, dude, like way inside the ears,
High and tight.
but like high and tight, and his beams literally would swooped around, and the tip of his beams pointed back towards his head.
Oh, why did you not shoot him?
Well, I'm still thinking. I'm like trying to do. I'm trying to do math in my head. By the way, I wasn't the greatest math student in high school, especially in college. God, not in college. Y'all can keep calculus. Have that. That ain't for me. Anyways, but I'm trying to do the math, and I'm looking at him. He's got great time length coming up, and it's like a crown of antlers or crown of tines, and he's got dark rack, and I'm like, he's mature. Like I'm confident this deer's 5+ years old.
Oh my God.
And big neck, big brisket on him, but I'm like, I don't know. I don't think I can shoot this deer, because if I shoot this deer, there's a chance for a fact he's not making the width. He's not 16 inches wide, and it's kind of iffy if he's going to have 18-inch beams on him. So I'm like, I just take the safety off, and then he just kind of looks back. He looks back in front of him and just kind of eases off to the woods, and like goes up towards where Tyler's sitting. And I text him like, hey, dude, had a really nice buck, like probably the best borderline buck I've ever seen out here on these hunts. And he's working towards you. Because what I'm hoping is he goes out in that food plot, and Tyler has all the time in the world to look at him, and he can kind of get a better judgment. Because this happened quick. This is like 10, 15 seconds.
Yeah.
And I'm like, hopefully he'll get out on that food plot. Tyler can look at him. And if Tyler really thinks he's, not only, of course, he's mature, but like the beams match up, hopefully he'll shoot the deer. Deer ends up not doing it. I can hear him. He can hear him. He starts trotting again. He kind of works up and hits this roadbed, the big roadbed, interior road that runs on our property, or our unit, and cut across is what it sounded like he was doing. And that was it. So he ended up seeing that night like a pig, 2 bobcats, and like 4 raccoons. He never had a deer come out of that food plot. And I was texting Tommy. I'm like, dude, I just had one. I was telling Tommy, and Tommy's like, man, you should have shot that sucker. He's like, I guarantee he was legal. He's like, he's like, you think he was 5+? I'm like, yeah. I'm like, very confident. Like big body deer, very big body deer. And he's like, you should have just shot that sucker.
Did you end up talking to the biologist about that deer?
Yeah, I try to explain it to him, and Justin's like, I mean, you passed him, so you made the right decision. He's like, if you're kind of guessing, he's like, oh, that's one thing he mentioned in the meeting, and that's something I told some of the guys. I'm like,
yeah,
if you have to do there and try to do math in your head, it's better just to pass him and not deal with it.
Yeah, that is true. I'll give you that.
So anyway,
it's
called conservation. I'm trying to let the deer go, and maybe someone else kills him, and he's big enough, and they're happy about it.
Bro,
so
you talking about he's 5.5? That's a management buck, son. God,
dude, but he had tines like my second buck I killed last year, like that time length. But he had way better mass.
Well, okay.
Like he had mass bigger than that.
Like that one right there?
Bigger than that 7-point deadhead behind him.
Bro, I can't. Oh.
Well, unless they change the rules of like, if you see like a real old deer and he's like kind of borderline, just kill the thing. If they change that rule,
See, I bet. Yeah, it'd be hard for them to enforce that though.
But also, so that all happened. We ended up going back to Tommy's place. And Tommy, I was telling him about it, and he's like, man, he's like, dude, he's like, that sounded like a great deer, and I'm like, yeah, I'm like, it was pretty awesome.
I mean, my thing is, if he was tall and they curved and came back in, I'm like, oh, dude, that probably gives you the 18. I don't know, maybe I'm wrong.
But see, that's the thing is like we've had buddies who've killed him and it was 1/4 inch short.
I personally know someone. One of my buddies shot one, missed it by 1/4 inch, and yeah, they got him for it.
Yeah, and they're very, very strict. There's a fee for it, confiscate the deer.
Yeah, he got fined, and he lost his deer, and his hunt was over.
Yeah.
So, like, he still had does he could have went and shot.
I'm telling you, they are very, very strict on some of these hunts. So that's why I was like, I'm not even going to do it. I'm not. Anyways, but I told Justin, and he's like, he made a good decision. Because I told him, like, dude, I just passed the most borderline deer I've ever seen.
But that's probably the biggest buck you've ever passed, isn't it?
Oh yeah, look, dude, listen. If we were on any other piece of public in the state of Alabama, deer's coming home. Deer was here. I would have had the rack right here, 100%.
How far was he?
80 yards. Oh! I mean, he's just right there, and he's just like,
woo,
and like real dark body, but like his rack was like
chocolate antler.
chocolate reddish color is probably the best way to put it.
Oh, son.
Like, yeah, it was like, when I say like, it was like, had like a slight red tint to it, like the brown antlers.
Oh,
And I was like, yeah.
that is,
So anyway,
that hurts. That
But,
hurts a little bit.
but yeah,
So you called him in.
yeah, I mean, dude, he came in.
I bet that got the old heart thumping, didn't it?
Yeah, because I'm like, what else is going to come out? So I kept calling, didn't have anything else come out. One thing I realized on those tight logging road beds, or like these tight road beds where like the canopy cover like consumes it, like you're almost looking through a tunnel. Like you can walk underneath it fine, but there's like overhanging branches. The last 15, 20 minutes of legal light, you can't see anything.
It's like looking into a black
It's
hole.
like, yeah, looking at a black hole. And like I had my binos and I was like looking, I'm like, dude, if one comes out, there's no, because you ain't ground checking one out here.
No.
Unless it is a mega giant, okay?
Yeah.
Which they have. And I was talking to Tommy about it later, and Tommy was like, dude, he's like, I was telling him what unit we had. He's like, dude, you have one of the two best units on that whole piece of public. Because he's like, I used to hunt it back in the day. He's drawn it one time, and he was telling me about one of the bucks he's killed over there. And he killed a real nice 8-point. And he said when he was dragging it back to like that little road bed. He drug it out and sitting there, and he like had to walk. He like walked back to his truck to grab his stuff, and he was gonna come back and get it. When he was coming back, he said it was a giant sitting there, and he was like stabbing the deer with his antlers. And he's like, it was a giant.
Yeah,
and he's like, the one I killed
buddy.
was a super respectable, like 120, 125 inch 8-point. But he's like, this other one made it look like a spike, and it was just like just tearing that deer up. And finally, the deer just like walked off. And he's like, there's nothing I can do about it.
Dang, that hurts my heart.
Yeah.
That hurts my heart. Jacob's due for a giant, man. This
Yeah.
year, you're due. I mean, that's all there is to it.
Quality over quantity.
That's
what
been
I
the
keep-
story of this
that's
year.
what I keep telling myself, and it ain't happening. But
Well, mate, hey, that might change.
well, like so,
It could change tomorrow.
well, kind of going later into the hunt, we started finding a bunch of pig sign, bunch of rooting, and I ended up. Well, by the way, everybody I met on this hunt, this is kind of like how it was last year. Everybody was listening to the podcast or like watching on YouTube. It was pretty cool. Like, cause I met one guy down there, Todd, and he's a listener to the show, watches the show, and he actually, his buddy drew the same unit we hunted last year, the 2 units we had last year. His buddy drew, and he was asking me about it. I was like, yeah, I was sending him pins and like, hey, dude, I'd go hunt this spot, like where I saw the giant 8-point, like this interior road bed in your place and all that kind of stuff. And he ended up telling me afterwards, or when we met back up, because he never gave me an update. And he's like, dude, I sat that spot. He's like, second to last morning. And he's like, I don't know if it was that deer, but a giant came walking through. And he's like, I wasn't even there to buck hunt. He's like, my buddy who drew, he's never killed like a really nice deer. I wanted him to kill one. I was sitting there just trying to shoot some does, and I had 2 does come out, and just a giant came out trailing them. And he called his buddy. He's like, hey, that deer's walking right to you. Like, get ready. And he was on another logging road. And his buddy told him that he had got down and walked out and was like checking out another spot. So he told him to run back to that logging road. And he said right when he ran back, he spooked the 2 does and the buck, and they spun back around and ran off.
Dang.
But I was like,
dude.
yeah. But anyways, up until the end of the hunt, I ended up shooting a pig, saw a bunch of pigs, never saw any other bucks. And ended up, when we got back, I had to leave hunt a little early to get back here for some stuff. The guys, the 2 listeners that were in the unit next to us, I don't know which one shot it, but one of them shot a really big, I think it's a 10-point, super heavy mass, big frame, tall tines. And I was like, that's awesome. I don't know which one it was, because I didn't swap phone numbers with them. But I was talking to those boys for a little bit, but it was fun. But the very last morning, I ended up slip hunting because I only had a few hours to hunt. And I ended up finding like all the sign. It was all in this big river bottom, like this big drainage, like really this big creek bottom with a ton of swamp chestnuts in it. And some of the swamp chestnuts were done, but a lot of the willow oaks and water oaks were dropping. And dude, there was just rubs, and it was like thick on the edge and a bunch of switch cane. Dude, it was like Travis Murray, like paradise, like switch cane thickets. big switch cane thicket. It's like head high switch cane, and there was just rubs going through it and scrapes going throughout the whole thing. And I ended up telling Tyler, I'm like, you need to come in here and hunt. And he ended up wrapping up the hunt and wasn't able to get a buck, but he ended up getting his 2 does. So it was fun though.
Yeah. Well, we got another one coming up here pretty soon where it's going to be kind of like our mountain hunt that we do every year. Got some history with it. Going to be actually implementing some tactics from our buddy Daniel Williams, who is standing behind the camera right now. Y'all hear him in a couple weeks. So that's going to be fun. But what are your thoughts for that hunt? I mean, because that one's coming up. I'm feeling pretty good about it.
I feel pretty.
I don't want to jinx anything.
I feel pretty good about it. Like it was the one. This the hunt I've been talking about all year. That like, if I don't kill a buck anywhere else, that's where we go to actually like tag out and kill 3 bucks, like $3 a piece in like 5-6 days. Now that's a high task. I don't think that's going to happen.
Yeah, well,
but it could happen.
We're hunting for like 5 days. I think.
So
4.5, 5 days.
Yeah. So I don't know. I mean, I feel good about the hunt. It's going to be interesting because again, as area we've had 2 years of history in that area. We're timing it specifically right when a lot of these big bucks, these mature bucks, are daylighting, hitting these scrapes, and like kind of checking through does. And it's the same time frame of when we've seen bucks start pushing does, which is a little early for the area, but it's still like I've shot a buck in there that was locked down with a doe who was fighting off another buck. We've seen a lot of running activity around that time frame of when we're going to be there, so it should be really, really good. Pretty susceptible to calling. Big ridge systems, mixed hardwoods and pines. So it's going to be very interesting kind of seeing how it plays out. But, yeah, we got that coming up next week.
Yeah. You got any you going to go back and hunt where you killed your buck last time?
Where I killed my buck last time. Second one or the first one?
You killed him in the same spot.
Oh, you're still talking about that hunt, the mount hunt. Probably.
Where did you think I was thinking?
I thought you were talking about deer from last year. Anyway.
Oh, interesting.
Because we didn't hunt up there a whole bunch last year. Talking about on the mountain piece of public. But, yeah, I mean, probably go back there. There's a couple other spots I'm kind of really interested in. So my thing is, like, pretty much just carrying the saddle stuff with me, like sticks, platform, and everything. But it's kind of also, like, not really slip hunting, but kind of hunting off the ground in a couple of those areas and just kind of catch a buck running some of those ridges. So it's gonna be interesting.
Yeah, you gonna rattle and stuff? You gonna bring the rattling antlers?
Probably. I don't really want to pack them in, but yeah.
I hate carrying them.
Yeah.
But
they're kind of a pain. But yeah, I'll probably carry those in. Of course, when I have a grunt call. Literally have not had a grunt call in my backpack the whole season.
Yep.
And it's like, I swear by it, like, you got to have a grunt call. If you don't have a grunt call, that's fine, but I'm going to have one.
You should have one.
Yeah, you should learn to build some confidence with it. So yeah, I'm going to have that. And then I'll be honest, I kind of wish I would have freaking kept Tyler's doe's tarsal glands. I would have kept those with me and just took those with me on the whole hunt.
Yeah, it's kind of cool because we're getting a huge rain before we go in on this hunt, and I mean all the rubs, all the scrapes. This is what I love about getting a big rain like this right before a big hunt. Is like you're gonna have all the shavings on the rubs that are gonna go down, like they're gonna get washed away, and all the scrapes are gonna be washed out. And so anything that we find on day one when we go in just a couple days here is gonna be like fresh. That's going to be really fun. So, I think we're going to find so much sun. The last 2 times we've been in there, the amount of rubs and scrapes is kind of obnoxious.
Yeah, it's very distracting. Because,
honestly.
Because, like, some of the rubs you find, like, there's no way a buck's walking through during daylight. We've literally never hunted some of those spots. It's like, maybe because we're going to be in there for so long, maybe this is worth just, like,
maybe start
sitting in super obvious locations.
That's what I'm saying. And also, like, we're going to be hunting all day. So, midday spots are going to be heavy on the mind. Midday. This is the place where we coined the term "trust the terrain."
Yeah,
that's where this is where that came from.
Yep.
So, are you going to trust the terrain?
Probably not. Being 100%, I don't know. I might just get distracted doing something and then, just see. There's a lot of big terrain features in there that you can set on. It's like if you sat on one of those spots for 3 days in a row, you're probably going to kill a really, really good deer. It's just, do you have the mental fortitude to sit there for 3 days in order to make that happen?
That's true.
I don't know. I get distracted very easy. I'm like, maybe I should go bounce over here. That's probably my biggest issue. Is like I like to bounce around too much, even like on a small section.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah,
instead of just buckling down. But yeah, no, it's gonna be fun. That, and then also just the timing. Where this is gonna be one of our filmed hunts, so we're gonna have one of our camera guys with us filming it. So Caden's coming up from Florida to film with us. Which I told you, I think he needs to go with you. Because I think you're very high odds. If I kill one, I'm going to luck into, like, hopefully a big deer. But, like, no guarantee. Like, don't follow me with a camera.
Oh, my
Follow
gosh.
Andrew. He'll get something killed. And then, I'll play cleanup on the back end. So every trip we do is, like, you always kill one first. And I'm over here like, dang, okay. Let's figure out what I want to do.
Hey, last time we were here, that wasn't the case. You killed one first.
Yeah.
And
sure.
I killed one on the last afternoon of the last day.
Yeah.
Because I think Thomas.
Yeah, because Thomas was in there filming with us.
Yeah. Oh,
So-
yeah. He followed me around, and I didn't kill it. Maybe Cage should go with you. Maybe the camera guy screws things up. I don't know.
I don't know. Well, see, you didn't trust the train last time because you didn't want to sit one of those little saddles.
I know.
Yeah,
And then when I went and sat one, I that's when I shot the buck.
Yeah. So it's like, yep, that's the name of the game. Those little saddles, little benches, these big drainers that run up. It's like, get where all that comes together in one spot, and you just buckle down. On it.
I hunted it one time last year, and I hunted that one of those little saddles, and I saw like 11 deer in one morning. That's like the only time I hunted it last year. So we'll see. We'll see. There's some good ones walking through there last year. So this same date range, my man. So anyways, all right. Is that all you got?
Yeah, that's it.
Cool. Make sure you submit video questions.
Yeah, video questions, again, on the website. Links down in the show notes or video description below. Also, appreciate everybody that's been buying apparel, hoodies, hats. That's still on sale, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so we still got hoodies and hats.
It's about to end, so you better go get it now.
Yep. Well, hoodies, shirts, hats, all that kind of stuff. Appreciate everybody's been buying all the apparel. And then appreciate, again, everybody's been leaving us listener success stories. We've had a lot more come in over the last few weeks. Again, if you kill something, implement something that you've learned from the podcast, from past guests, or from us, or you heard on the show, there's a link down in the show notes below for that, or on the website, thesouthern.outdoorsman.com. Submit your listener success story. And again, we're going to start posting those kind of when season starts winding down, and actually probably getting a few of you guys on for some weekly or bi-weekly episodes kind of in the off season. So it's going to be super, super fun. But other than that, appreciate everybody watching the podcast. Thank you for listening, and we'll catch you back here on the next episode from the Southern Outdoorsman. And remember, guys, y'all stay Southern.